take it away.
Thanks to Civic Tech Toronto for inviting us. We're very excited to present our report on digital transnational repression in Canada. I'm Siena Anstis. I'm Senior Legal Advisor at the Citizen Lab, and I'm here with my colleague Noura, who can introduce herself.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to present our report here. My name is Noura Aljizawi. I'm a research officer at the Citizen Lab, and also I'm a co-author of this report.
So for those of you who don't know the Citizen Lab, we're an interdisciplinary laboratory based at the Munk School, and we focus on research, development, and strategic policy and legal engagement at the intersection of information and communication technology, human rights, and global security. All right, so quickly the agenda. We'll start with what is transnational repression, digital transnational repression, briefly talk about the types of digital technologies we saw used in this activity, look at the social and psychological impacts of digital transnational repression, and run through some of the recommendations that we're making in this report to the Canadian government. So first off, what is transnational repression, digital transnational repression? So transnational repression is a term that's used to describe how governments act to silence, persecute, harass, or intimidate activists and dissidents living in exile. And it covers not just the use of digital technologies, which is what we refer to as digital transnational repression, but also in-person threats, such as sort of in-person harassment, assassinations, kidnappings, intimidation of family members back home, which is sometimes called coercion by proxy, and surveillance and online harassment, which is really what we're interested in at the Citizen Lab. So why is this a growing problem? So there's three factors to highlight. So the threats posed by dissidents and activists in exile are increasing with greater migration and mobility. We're seeing a lot more people on the move for various reasons. The capacity for transnational repression has grown, and one particular issue there to highlight is that there's an increasing availability of digital tools that can facilitate this type of behavior, as well as increased internet connectivity. And then the last point to mention is the normative cost for engaging transnational repression still remains pretty low. Recently, the United States has started taking specific action targeted at transnational repression, but they're definitely sort of a leader in taking those steps compared to other countries. So what is digital transnational repression? So briefly, it's a subset of the broader phenomenon of transnational repression. So really zeroing in how digital technologies are used by authoritarian states to engage in this type of cross-border activity. And it really demonstrates a shift away from the early research that really focused on the beneficial aspects of digital technologies. So over to Noura, who will discuss the types of technologies we saw used in this activity in Canada.
Thanks, Siena. So basically, this section describes what digital transnational repression looks like in practice, and draws from the experiences of what participants in our research described to us during the interviews. So participants in our study identified a wide range of tools used in the digital transnational repression. And yeah, by the way, given the audience of this presentation, I won't describe in details what each of these are, but I can identify how our participants experience these and specific concerns for refugees and immigrant communities and those who are engaging in transnational repression. Like they described, for instance, phishing, malware, account takeovers, SIM swapping, harassment, social media trolls, disinformation, DDoS attacks, censorship, and other kinds of digital threats. So this section basically outlines some of the psychological and social impacts of digital transnational repression, what we have encountered while conducting the interviews with refugees and immigrants in Canada. We wanted to understand, as Siena mentioned, the social and psychological impact of these threats, of these types of threats, to understand the impact it has on the integration of these refugees and immigrants in the new communities. So as you can see, while our project is in the Canadian context, but we argue that these impacts are universal to anyone experiencing digital transnational repression in other contexts out of Canada. In our research specifically, we look at the digital transnational repression impacts, so the ability to get in education, work, personal well-being, safety, and political and social activism. So basically, digital transnational repression has impacted negatively the participants' physical health. I'm so sorry because we have very limited time. I can't read the quotes, but I do encourage you. I put them here in the slides, so I do encourage you to read them. And you can also look at them in the original report. These kinds of digital threats have also impacted their mental health. During the interviews, many participants talk about anxiety, fear, paranoia, stress, and other issues, as you can see on the slide too. They also describe to us how they became unable to think, sleep, or eat properly. Many others have experienced burnout because of their activism and the digital threats they have been through. Consequently, the digital threats have impacted their education and career negatively. Some have described the efforts on their ability, the effects on their ability to concentrate in their studies. Others have described the impact on their business and careers. Participants also noted how they feel like they need to self-censor themselves online or in real life because they started to feel unsafe. The sense of unsafety expanded beyond their own safety. They started being concerned of the safety of others. It was raised by by many participants. And thus they self-censor themselves even on the very personal, ordinary calls, such as calling their family or friends back home. So usually for newcomers, they rely, in general, they rely on social network with communities from their country of origin to resettle in the new country. However, for some of the individuals who've been subjected to digital transnational repression, such network, unfortunately, or communities might be a source of fear, as they feel like anxious about the possibility of being targeted through these networks by authoritarian regimes, loyalists, or informants. Participants also reported how they feel socially isolated, both online and offline. Furthermore, a participant expressed how they feel, how they try to avoid any interaction or socialization with people from their country of origin in Canada, while another participant also, who avoids socializing with people from their country of origin, expressed their concerns for the other people's safety in Canada if they associate with them. Also, there is a common tactic, as you know, the authoritarian regimes undertake digital transnational repression and transnational repression more broadly to get after family members in the country of origin to threaten dissidents abroad. Yeah, also, unfortunately, gender-based violence and gender-based component to online and misogynist attack was overlapped and was very obvious in the digital threats targeting the female dissidents we interviewed. Several participants noted that the online harassment they face often had a gender-based component. Several female participants described the misogynistic and gender-based forms of harassment they faced. One participant noted that the harassment she faced online frequently used violent imagery related to sexual assault or targeted her based on her appearance. Another participant also described an instance in which her contact information was shared online in an advertisement for sexual work. She also described an incident in which photographed image for her mate were distributed to participants of a conference she was presenting at. She went to the police, but was told that there is nothing that the police could do for her. As many human rights organizations reported how authoritarian regimes commit sexual-based violence as a means of torture. Basically, when female activists are not in the physical reach of these authoritarian regimes, digital technologies enable them to digitalize the violence. Dissidents' departure from their country of origin they didn't necessarily resolve their concerns regarding their physical safety. Many dissidents and activists don't feel safe in Canada, whereas some other participants felt physically safe here in Canada because of the state of their country of origin is far away. Participants also noted that in addition to digital targeting, they were also subjected to other means of transnational repression, such as physical threat, death threats, as you can see on the slides also, and other reported being physically surveilled and stalked in Canada. In other cases, in addition to the digital transnational repression, the harm that the country of origin regime's loyalists aimed to cause was economic. And finally, from the experiences of our research participants in reaching out and reporting to the law enforcement and intelligence services in Canada, they pointed that there is a significant lack of government assistance, and digital transnational repression is not explicitly recognized by the Canadian government. Moreover, police and CSIS were generally unhelpful at all. I will pass it over to Siena so she can share the recommendations of, briefly, the recommendations of our report. Over to you, Siena.
Thanks, Noura. So based on the research we've done to date on digital transnational repression and its impact on immigrant and refugee communities in Canada, we came up with a sort of three-pronged approach to how this might be addressed by the Canadian government in Canada. So the first looks at measures that would hold perpetrators to account. And I think one of the most important first steps is just a clear message from the Canadian government that transnational repression and digital transnational repression is something that is happening and is not to be tolerated. So there's clear policy that then is articulated around this specific principle. And some of the other suggestions go to that. For example, strengthening export control law so that Canada is exporting surveillance technology to regimes that then use it against people who are in Canada, as one example. And then I think, which is really important, is measures to assist victims of digital transnational repression. So one that might interest people in this group is how to further empower and train dissidents and activists to be able to resist this type of activity to the extent that that's possible. And I think here it could be interesting to see more government support to do this kind of work, and sort of partnerships between community organizations and government to really understand where the gaps are in terms of technical knowledge, and the sort of support that these communities need to be able to deal with this type of activity happening against them. And that could include other dimensions, for example, training law enforcement investigating digital crimes. We noticed that law enforcement didn't really understand what was happening, which contributed to the lack of response from them. And as part of that as well, I think a type of hotline or formal reporting mechanism to the government where people can explain what's happening to them, and that sort of information can be logged and understood and analyzed to really understand how this is happening in Canada would be very helpful as another first step. And finally, measures focused on intermediaries. So what we have in mind here is, for example, social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, Meta, Instagram were platforms that we saw used to engagement, harassment, and abuse of the people that we interviewed. And so addressing their role in this dynamic, I think, will be very important. Great, so we won't be having a discussion because we're being recorded live, but thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and hopefully you can access a copy of the report. And there's also a very short video that we prepared that sort of summarizes everything we just discussed here.
Yeah, and also please, if you have any questions, feedback, feel free to email us. And yeah, we would like to hear back from you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.